So, here's the deal. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I've been carrying something heavy for weeks now. It's been eating away at me, and I just need to let it out. This story's a bit long, but it's one I need to tell to clear my head. It all started with my fiancée, Virginia. She's 29, and we've been together for 3 solid years, engaged for the last 8 months. Everything felt great, honestly. I thought I'd found the one. But then, about 2 months ago, things started to shift. At first, it was just a vibe, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Now, for a little context, I built a small chain of organic grocery stores from scratch. 10 years ago, I opened my first store in a rough part of town. It was a dumpy little place, and just about everyone I knew thought I'd lost my damn mind trying to take on the supermarket giants. But I had this dream, creating a space where folks could get good, healthy, organic food without going broke. Those early years were pure hell. I'm talking sleeping on a mattress in my office because I couldn't afford rent, constantly battling skeptical suppliers, and dealing with equipment breaking down when I barely had $1 to my name. Every day was a grind, just trying to get people to give my store a chance. But I didn't give up. I pushed through it all. Eventually, that one store turned into 2, then 5. Now, there are a dozen locations spread across 3 different states. I'm not saying any of this to show off. I just want you to understand what I put into this business and why what happened next hit me like a punch to the gut. When Virginia and I started seriously talking about getting married, I was upfront about wanting a prenup. Not because I didn't trust her, but because this business is everything to me. It's my life's work. She seemed totally on board. She used to say things like, "I know how hard you've worked for this, and I respect that you want to protect it." She even told her friends how reasonable I was being. And I made sure the prenup was fair. It wasn't just about protecting me. I wanted her to have security too, no matter what. I set up a savings account in her name, gave her an emergency credit card, and made sure she'd never be left with nothing. I wanted her to feel safe, not stuck. But then, little things started changing. It was subtle at first, comments here and there about how married couples should share everything. She'd send me articles about couples splitting their businesses 50-50ths. I brushed it off, figured it was just nerves about tying the knot. Then she started asking more detailed questions about my company. Not casual interest, these were targeted, business-savvy questions about margins, growth plans, stuff she'd never cared about before. She started hanging around when I was on business calls, pretending she was just chilling. But she was clearly listening in. Things really started getting weird when she began talking about wanting to be involved in the company. Now, Virginia works in social media marketing for small fashion brands, not knocking that, but grocery retail is a whole different beast. Suddenly, she's talking about having her own office at HQ and taking over our social media presence. At the same time, she stopped being the independent woman I'd always known. She used to split bills, cover her half on dates, buy her own things. Lately, though, everything's been going on our shared credit card $500 shopping sprees at Nordstrom, luxury spa days, expensive fitness classes. When I gently brought it up, she got defensive. Said, "Well, we're getting married, aren't we? What's yours is mine." I kept trying to tell myself she was just excited about our future, that maybe she genuinely wanted to be a bigger part of my world. But something didn't sit right in my gut. Then came the bombshell. Last week, I was going through some paperwork in my home office when I found a copy of our prenup. Only, it wasn't the one we'd agreed on with the lawyers. Not even close. This version had entire new sections, clauses about her getting a piece of the business, profit sharing, half of everything, including future growth. Even if we split up just a year into marriage. I read it over and over, thinking maybe I was misreading it. But no, it had clearly been altered. Then I remembered Virginia saying offhand that her lawyer friend was reviewing the prenup. Well, that friend did way more than review it. In that moment, all I could think was the woman I fell for, the one who used to brag about how proud she was of my work, would never do something like this. It was like a stranger had taken her place. I sat there in my office for 2 straight hours, trying to calm myself down. The more I read, the worse it got. Not only did she try to claim half of what I already had, she snuck in stuff about future stores and even revenue from our planned but not yet launched online sales. That's when I called her. Tried to sound normal, but she clearly picked up on something being off. She asked if everything was okay. I just told her we needed to talk about some paperwork. She said she'd be over in an hour. That was the longest damn hour of my life. I had both versions of the prenup laid out side by side on my desk, the one we actually agreed to and this Frankenstein version that someone had tampered with. I also had my bank statements pulled up showing a neat little list of her recent shopping sprees. Virginia walked in like nothing was wrong, dressed to the nines in the sleek blazer I hadn't seen before. Later, I found out it cost $900. Bought it just the week before. She leaned in, kissed me like it was just another day, but the moment her eyes hit the documents on the desk, her whole vibe shifted. Her smile vanished. I kept my cool. I picked up both prenups, looked her in the eye, and said as calmly as I could, "Can you explain why these don't match?" She tried to play it off like she had no clue what I was talking about. All innocent, wide-eyed confusion. So I walked her through it, pointed out the new clauses she slipped in about profit sharing, rights to business expansions, the whole thing. And you want to know what she said? She didn't deny it. She looked me dead in the face and said, "Oh, those? That's just standard stuff. Any smart person would include that in their prenup." Standard? I've been in this business for over a decade. I know a ton of other store owners and not a single one of them has ever had a prenup that gives their spouse half of future expansions. That's not a standard anything. That's a calculated grab. Then I pointed to a clause that gave her decision-making authority in my company. I asked her flat out what experience she had running a grocery business. Her answer? Defensive. Said she'd been learning more about it and that she deserved a voice in our future together. Now listen, Virginia has a background in social media marketing for boutique fashion brands. She's good at posting about dresses and putting together influencer packages, and there's nothing wrong with that. But managing a chain of grocery stores? That's a whole different world. She's never dealt with ordering produce, managing supplier contracts, dealing with inventory losses, or broken refrigeration units. But she launched into this speech about how I clearly didn't trust her and how all she wanted was to protect herself. Said something like, "What if you leave me after I've invested years of my life in this marriage? I need to know I'm covered." I told her straight, the original prenup already gave her a solid foundation. It had a generous settlement built in, one that actually increased the longer we stayed married. She wouldn't be left out in the cold, not even close. But none of that seemed to matter. She kept talking about how modern marriages are about partnership, how things are different now. And sure, if she'd ever shown interest in actually being a partner in the business, I might have understood. But she never had, not once before this mess started. She never asked how operations worked. Never asked to shadow me at a store or understand the back-end systems. Now suddenly she wants equity and authority? It didn't make sense. Then the conversation really hit a wall. I brought up her recent spending, told her I'd seen the charges. $900 on that blazer, $1,200 for some weekend wellness retreat, and another $2,000 blown at a designer boutique. All within the past few weeks. Her excuse? Well, I need to look the part if I'm going to be in the business. That's when I snapped, just a little. I said, "Virginia, you're not in the business. You never have been. And secretly changing legal documents doesn't make you a business partner." That's when the tears came. She started crying, said I was being harsh, said all she ever wanted was for us to be equals. She asked why I was making such a big deal over what she called small changes to the prenup. Small changes? Trying to take half of what I've spent a decade building isn't some minor adjustment. That's like sneaking into someone's house while they're on vacation and remodeling the whole place, then acting surprised when they get upset. She stormed out, said she needed time to think, said I didn't value her enough. Been staying at her parents' house ever since. I looped in my lawyer the next day. He told me not to panic, said none of the changes were valid since I hadn't signed off on them. But he also warned me to keep a close eye on everything moving forward. Who knows what else she might try to alter or file without me knowing. Since that blow-up, she's been sending me these long texts trying to guilt me. One of them read, "I can't believe you're acting like this. After everything we've been through, you don't trust me over a few small changes." I sat there, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wanted to say, "Virginia, trust doesn't mean you get to rewrite contracts behind someone's back." But before I could type anything, she sent another message. That's when she dropped the bomb. Austin said, "Every smart woman does this before marriage. At least someone cares about protecting me. Mark." Of course it was him. Her brother had drifted back into town a few months ago. Guy's got the track record of a cursed lottery ticket. 3 failed marriages. Job hopping every 6 months. Always with some new big idea. that fizzles out before he even cashes his first paycheck. Like a walking cautionary tale in denim. Before I could even respond, my office door burst open. Megan, my assistant, came in right behind Virginia, red in the face. "I'm so sorry, sir. I told her you were in the middle of a meeting." Virginia was already inside, hair a mess, eyes blazing like she just stepped off a soap opera set. Across from my desk sat one of my biggest suppliers, spinning around in his chair, clearly unsure of what the hell was going on. "We need to talk," Virginia barked. Her voice echoed through the office like a fire alarm. "You can't keep avoiding me just because you're mad about the prenup." I felt my heart drop. "Virginia, I'm in a meeting." She didn't flinch. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Am I interrupting business?" She spat the word like it left a bad taste in her mouth. The supplier stood up, already packing up his notes. I turned to him, apologetic. "I am so sorry. Can we reschedule for tomorrow?" He nodded, and after he left, I turned back to Virginia, shut the door and stared at her. "What the hell were you thinking? You can't just show up and barge into meetings like this." She dropped her purse onto the nearest chair like she owned the place. "Oh, so now I'm not even allowed in my future business? Austin says I need to be more assertive." The second she said his name, my jaw clenched. I knew exactly where this was heading. "This isn't your business, Virginia," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "And seriously, why the hell are you taking advice from Mark? The guy's never had a single successful venture in his entire life." Her eyes narrowed, and she pointed a finger right at my chest. "Don't you dare talk about my brother like that." She took a step closer, fire in her eyes. "He's been through divorces. He knows how men like you operate." I backed up a little, stunned. "Men like me? What the hell does that mean?" She folded her arms and looked me dead in the eye. "You know exactly what I mean. Guys with money. Businessmen who think they can control everything. Austin warned me about people like you." And right then, I didn't even recognize the woman standing in front of me. Was this really Virginia? The same woman who used to cheer me on during the hardest parts of my journey? Who laughed at my dumb jokes? Who made me feel like we were in it together? She crossed her arms tighter. "Austin says I should already be on all the bank accounts before the wedding. It's the only way to make sure you don't hide anything from me." I just stood there, silent for a moment, staring at her, trying to line up this person with the Virginia I thought I knew just a few months ago. The strong, independent woman who never let anyone tell her what to think. Now suddenly parroting everything her brother said like it was gospel. "Virginia," I said gently, "the prenup we agreed on, the real one, already guarantees you'll be financially secure. Why isn't that enough for you?" Her eyes flared with anger. "Taken care of? I'm not some charity case, Keith. I deserve half of everything. Austin says that's what the courts usually give wives anyway." I winced. "But you haven't contributed to building this business," I said, instantly regretting how that sounded. "You've never worked a single day here." She shot back, loud and raw. "I've been supporting you emotionally. That counts for something." She started pacing like a cornered animal, frustration spilling out of every step. "And once we're married, I'm going to be an important part of the business." "How?" I asked, genuinely confused. "You don't know anything about how grocery stores run." "I can learn," she snapped, her voice cracking. "Austin says I'm smart enough to run any business. He says you're just trying to keep me dependent so you can stay in control." I sat down hard in my chair, completely drained. She was speaking with her own voice, sure, but every word coming out of her mouth might as well have had Mark's name stamped on it. I took one last shot at calming things down. "Virginia, can we talk about this without bringing Austin into every sentence?" She leaned across my desk, staring me down. "Why are you so threatened by him? Just because he's telling me the truth about how this stuff usually works." "I'm not threatened by him," I said quietly. "I'm concerned that you're taking serious life advice from a guy who's failed at pretty much everything he's ever touched." Dead silence. Her face turned a deep, furious red. "How dare you?" She grabbed her purse, hands shaking, voice trembling. "Austin has done more for me than you realize. He's the only one warning me. You're just pissed because I'm not blindly following you anymore. She turned to storm out, then stopped at the door, eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. Austin says I should be documenting all of this, your controlling behavior, how you're trying to isolate me from my family. It'll come in handy later. Then she was gone. The door slammed behind her like a final punctuation mark. I reached for my phone and called my lawyer. I filled him in on what had just happened, and midway through he cut in with a question that made my stomach twist. Has Virginia's brother ever asked about your business finances? That's when it hit me. A few weeks back, my accountant mentioned someone had been calling the office. Said they were a potential investor, but they were asking weirdly specific questions about how the company was structured, our profit margins, even the leases on our locations. At the time, it didn't seem important, but thinking back, the voice, it sounded a lot like Mark. I looked over at the framed photo on my wall, me and Virginia at the beach last summer, her head thrown back in laughter while I told some dumb joke. That felt like it belonged to a completely different lifetime now. And that engagement ring I'd spent weeks choosing? Now it just felt like a weight in my chest, something heavy and wrong. I didn't know what the right move was. Should I call off the wedding? Try to wait this out and hope the old Virginia came back? Every option felt like the wrong one. Either I was giving up on someone I loved, or I was holding on to a version of her that didn't exist anymore. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Not long after that fight, her mom called me out of the blue. This is the same woman who used to tell Virginia she'd hit the jackpot with a guy like me. We got along great. I thought we respected each other. Not anymore. Her tone was sharp from the start. Keith, we need to talk about how you're treating Virginia. I blinked. What? What do you mean? She told us what happened with the prenup. She changed the prenup without telling me. Austin explained everything, she said. How you're trying to use money to control her. How you're pushing her to sign something unfair. Mrs. Ailish, that's just not true. The original agreement was fair. Virginia was the one who Austin says prenups are just tricks rich men use to keep women in their place, she cut in. Did you know his first wife walked away with nothing after their divorce? He's just trying to make sure Virginia doesn't make the same mistake. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mark's first wife walked away with nothing because Austin had nothing. The guy blew their savings on failed business schemes and lost their house in the process. What does that have to do with me? And then it got worse. Virginia's dad, who used to treat me like one of his own, who taught me how to bait a line and once said he hoped his grandkids had my work ethic, sent me a message I'll never forget. Very disappointed in you, Keith. We thought you were better than this. Austin showed us what you're trying to make Virginia sign. That's not what we raised her for. I tried explaining. Tried texting back that they had the story backwards. That Virginia was the one who changed the prenup. That I never once forced her to do anything. But they didn't want to hear it. As far as they were concerned, I was proving Austin right by refusing to just hand everything over. And then, just to top it off, I got a group text from a few of Virginia's cousins. People I've shared holidays with, helped move apartments, even hired one of them to work in one of my stores. We always had a weird feeling about you. Austin was right. You're just another greedy businessman trying to screw over our family. Virginia deserves better. I stared at the screen for a second, then typed my response. Do you guys remember when Austin borrowed $5,000 from your aunt last year for that can't-miss business idea? Did he ever pay her back? Send. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. At this point, I wasn't just losing Virginia, I was losing everyone who came with her. And yet part of me still wasn't sure who I was really losing. Virginia? Or the version of her that never truly existed in the first place? They left the group chat. That was it for me. I decided it was time to dig deeper. Didn't take long to find out what was really going on. Turns out Mark's been holding little family meetings without me, of course. Sitting them all down like he's hosting some self-help seminar for how to survive rich men. He's been spinning these dramatic tales about his divorces, making himself out to be some poor guy who got robbed blind by gold diggers. Which is laughable. How do you lose everything when you didn't have anything to begin with? But somehow he's convinced Virginia's entire family that every successful business owner is just a manipulator waiting to walk out the door. That the only way to stay safe is to take as much as you can before the marriage even starts. And the worst part? Virginia's eating it up. She believes him. Every word. She even posted some cryptic nonsense on Facebook. Funny how money brings out true colors. Grateful for my brother's wisdom. Some men will never understand that marriage means sharing everything. I commented on the post. Just one line. Does that include sharing the truth about secretly changing legal documents behind your partner's back? She blocked me. Right then, I knew this wasn't going to resolve with a calm talk or a few therapy sessions. So I decided to take it straight to the source. Mark. Found out he was holed up at some extended stay motel on the edge of town. I texted him, told him we needed to talk. He agreed to meet at a nearby coffee shop. I walked in and there he was, Mark, already sitting in the corner like he owned the place, flashing that smug grin like he'd just checkmated me in a game I didn't even realize I was playing. Appreciate you meeting me, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. He leaned back, that smile still glued to his face. Hey there, future brother-in-law, or maybe not, the way things are heading. Drop the act, Mark, I said, my patience thin. I know what you've been doing. He raised his eyebrows like he was surprised. Doing? I'm just looking out for my baby sister. By telling her to rewrite our prenup behind my back? By calling my office pretending to be an investor? No denial. He just smirked and shrugged. Like he was proud of it. Hey, can't fault a guy for doing a little research. Someone's gotta protect Virginia's interests. I took a slow breath, keeping my tone steady. She had plenty of interests before you rolled back into town. A job, independence, dreams of her own. Now she's just parroting your war stories like they're gospel. I'm teaching her how the real world works, he said, voice turning cold. You think you can just stash away your millions and leave her high and dry? Not gonna happen. You already had your lawyer friend review the original prenup, I reminded him. You know damn well it was fair. Something flickered in his expression just for a second. Fair, he scoffed, leaning in. I've seen your financials. Those stores are printing money. Virginia deserves at least 75% just for putting up with you. That stopped me. My coffee cup hovered midair. How do you see my numbers, Mark? He blinked, then played it off. Oh, you know. Virginia might have left some paperwork out. So what's the real plan? I asked, everything clicking into place. Use Virginia to get what you couldn't get from your own failed marriages? His face flushed. You don't know a damn thing about my marriages. Those women took everything from me. Took what? Your gambling debt? The credit cards you maxed out? Your string of brilliant business ideas that crashed in 6 months? He slammed his fist on the table, rattling the cups. You think you're better than me because your stores got lucky? I could run that whole company better than you if I had the shot. And then he said it, the line that made the whole puzzle snap into focus. Virginia already promised me a spot in the company once she gets her share. I just stared at him. There it was. The truth laid bare. So that's what this is really about, I said. You're not protecting her. You're using her to get a paycheck. She's family, he snapped. Family looks out for each other. Unlike you hoarding everything like some dragon. I leaned forward. The only one trying to take everything here is you. He glared at me. Does Virginia know what you're planning? I tilted my head. Does she know you're planning to hitch your failed career to my company? He didn't answer. You've got experience, huh? I said. In what? Losing other people's money. His face darkened. Then he tried to flip it, said, you think you're so clever? Just wait until Virginia tells people how you verbally attacked her brother. How you're trying to isolate her from her family. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my phone, and set it down on the table. You mean this conversation I've been recording? His face drained of color. Then it flushed red again. You can't do that. That's illegal. I didn't say anything. Just watched the panic rise in his eyes. He stood up fast, his chair scraping hard against the tile floor. You just made a huge mistake, he growled. Virginia's never gonna believe you over me. Then he leaned in real close. And when she gets her half, you'll be begging me for a job. He stormed out, but I was already sending the recording to my lawyer. The next morning, my phone lit up with a text from Virginia. How dare you threaten my brother? Austin was right about you all along. You're just jealous because he actually understands business. I didn't respond. Just forwarded the message to my attorney. The day after that, Virginia showed up at my house. No call, no warning. She still had a key, and she let herself right in while I was working from home. I saw her face and immediately knew we weren't having a conversation. We were having a war. She was furious about the recording. But more than that, something about her had changed. The woman I loved wasn't there anymore. This version of Virginia looked like her, sounded like her, but everything else? Gone. I tried to show her the recording. Tried to let her hear Austin admitting he wanted a position in my company, admitting he'd seen my private financial documents. But she wouldn't even look at the phone. Wouldn't hit play. Wouldn't even consider the possibility. It was like I was talking to someone under a spell. The more evidence I showed her, the more defensive she got. She kept shaking her head, kept calling it fake, out of context, manipulative. Her expression shifted wildly, denial, anger, disbelief, rage, all fighting each other on her face as I played it anyway. And I realized something in that moment. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to wake up a person who didn't want to be woken up. When I confronted her with the security footage, Austin going through my office, rifling through business files and copies of the documents she'd been quietly sending him, she didn't deny it. Instead, she flipped the script. Suddenly, I was the bad guy for having cameras in my own office. Not a word about the invasion of privacy on her end. Not a thought about how she and her brother had crossed a line. Nope. In her mind, being engaged to me meant she already had a claim to everything I owned. My business, my accounts, even my office. That moment broke something in me. We sat down to talk, really talk, for what felt like the last time. I brought up how different she'd become since Austin came back into the picture. Before all this, she never cared about grocery store operations or wanted to know how my business worked. But now, she was claiming she was entitled to 75% of it because of her emotional contribution. And it wasn't even really her talking. Every single sentence started with "Austin says." She'd lost her voice, completely replaced by her brother's bitterness. Then she showed me messages between her and divorce lawyers. We weren't even married yet. She was out here planning our divorce while I was still finalizing wedding vendors and picking menu options. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The woman I had proposed to, the one I had trusted enough to give a future to, was actively plotting how to dismantle what I'd spent 10 years building. And the worst part? She didn't even think it was wrong. She genuinely believed it was just smart planning. Just being careful. She looked me in the eye and said, "I have to make sure I'm secure," like I hadn't done everything possible to provide that security from day one. When she finally walked out that night, she wasn't the same woman who had walked in. Virginia, the woman I'd loved, was gone. In her place stood someone who didn't see a partner when she looked at me. She saw a business opportunity. She chose to buy into Mark's warped idea of marriage over the relationship we had actually built. That night, I started getting bombarded with messages from her family, all parroting the same lines, accusing me of being controlling, invasive, manipulative. One even said I was violating her privacy by having cameras in my office. The next morning, everything shattered completely. I found out Virginia had gone behind my back and met with one of my competitors. A guy I'd had tense dealings with in the past. They sat down and talked business. That was it. That was the final nail. It wasn't just about calling off an engagement anymore. It was about accepting that the person I loved had completely changed. Or maybe the person I thought I loved had never really existed to begin with. The trust was gone. And without trust, there's nothing left to fight for. That night, I made my decision. As much as it tore me up inside, I knew I couldn't keep going with this relationship. I needed someone who trusted me, someone who couldn't be swayed by every whisper in their ear. If Virginia could turn on me this easily, if she was willing to betray me before we even said our vows, what would happen after we were married? So I did what needed to be done. I sat down, drafted an email, copied my lawyer, and sent it. I told her the wedding was officially canceled due to her attempts to alter the prenup without my knowledge and for leaking private business information to a competitor. I also attached the recording of Austin admitting their little plan. 20 minutes later, my phone blew up. Virginia called, sobbing at first. Then she started flipping back and forth, begging me to reconsider, then threatening to expose me for being a controlling abuser. She shouted over the phone, "Austin says you can't just cancel a wedding without agreeing to a settlement first. You owe me compensation for emotional trauma." I didn't argue. I didn't feed into it. I just stayed silent and recorded the entire thing, just like my lawyer told me to do when people start revealing their true colors. A few hours later, she texted me again, new tone, new angle. Apparently, she'd been venting to Mark. "Fine, but I'm keeping the ring. And I'll stay in the apartment until I'm ready to leave. You owe me that much." Like I owed her anything after all this. Then came the cherry on top. My mom called. She was in tears. "How could you do this to Virginia?" she asked. "She loves you. She just wanted to feel secure." I tried to explain. I told her about the prenup changes, the confidential documents, everything. But Virginia had already gotten to them. She'd worked her story like a pro. "She told us how you were trying to leave her with nothing," my mom said. Austin explained everything about how those prenups work. That was the moment I realized even my family was starting to fall under the same spell. So I packed up my laptop, drove over to my parents' house and showed them the receipts. Literally. I played the recordings. Showed them the altered prenup. Shared every piece of evidence I had. My mom didn't say much after that. She just sat there quietly, processing. But Virginia wasn't finished. Not even close. "Remember that emergency credit card I gave her a while back? The one meant for car trouble, medical bills, actual emergencies?" Well, in the span of just 3 days, she racked up nearly $122,000. Designer clothes, jewelry, flights, luxury spa services, you name it. When I saw the charges flooding in, I called her immediately. And you know what she said? I deserve nice things after everything I've done for you. I've invested too much time in this relationship to walk away with nothing. I reminded her the card was for emergencies. She laughed. Actually laughed. Then she said, well, maybe I should have been clearer about what counts as an emergency. That was it. While she was still on the line, I pulled up my banking app and canceled the card on the spot. No warning. No apology. Just done. She went quiet for half a second, then exploded. You can't do this to me, after everything I've been through. But I wasn't about to keep financing her version of justice. My lawyer says we'll get the ring back. It's a conditional gift in our state, legally tied to the engagement. The apartment might take a little longer. She's not on the lease, but tenant rights can be tricky. The whole thing was a train wreck. My head was spinning, and all I wanted was for this nightmare to finally be over. But then things took another turn. I thought it was over. But a couple of weeks after everything blew up, the story took one last, unexpected turn. It started when Cheryl, Virginia's sister, was helping Austin fill out a job application. She stumbled across his laptop and, out of curiosity, opened a few files. What she found wasn't a resume. It was a step-by-step breakdown of how to scam me, detailed plans, timelines, spreadsheets, even notes on when the divorce should be filed and how much money he thought they could extract from my business. Cheryl took the whole thing straight to their parents. Turns out Austin had been planning this con months before he even moved back into town. He'd studied my company, dug into which of my locations made the most profit, and even mapped out which relatives he needed to win over first. Virginia had been his pawn, his puppet, and he'd been pulling the strings from day one. Cheryl found texts too. Austin had been chatting with some guy pretending to be a lawyer. They were trading ideas on how to manipulate Virginia. One text read, "She's too trusting. This'll be easy. Once she's married, we push for majority control." Austin had even promised this fake lawyer a cut of whatever they managed to pull out of my business. When Virginia finally saw all of it, something broke inside her. Cheryl told me she spent 3 days locked in her bedroom just reading through everything. Turns out all those sob stories Austin used to tell about his ex-wives robbing him blind were lies. Complete fiction. The truth? His marriages ended because he kept trying to scam their families too. Then last week, Virginia showed up at my office. Security called me, said she was sitting out front in her car, crying. I went down there, and I'll admit it was hard to see her like that. She looked like hell, puffy eyes, unwashed hair, like she hadn't slept in days. She kept saying she didn't know, that she was sorry, that she never meant for it to go this far, and asked if we could talk about fixing things. For a second, part of me, some deep down piece, felt bad for her. Then she said, I've learned my lesson. We can go back to the original prenup. I won't ask for any of the business stuff. And that's when I knew she still didn't get it. This wasn't about the prenup anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. This was about trust. About character. About who she'd become. I looked her in the eyes and told her straight. Virginia, this isn't just about you trying to take my business. You betrayed my trust. You gave private documents to my competitors. You ran up $122,000 on my card. You tried to turn my family against me. Then I added, maybe Austin manipulated you. But you didn't have to go along with it. You made that choice. She broke down again, sobbing hard, saying she'd been scared. That Austin had convinced her all successful men hide their money. That she had to protect herself before she got left behind. She actually thought she was protecting herself by setting me up to lose everything. The conversation ended with her saying something that sealed it for me. But I gave up so much for you. I deserve another chance. I just looked at her and asked, what exactly did you give up, Virginia? Your part-time job you hated? The apartment you could barely keep? Or just the chance to scam someone else? She didn't answer. Just walked away. But not for good. She kept texting me for days. We can start fresh. I still love you. I'll prove I've changed. Cheryl told me Virginia had been telling everyone she'd grown from the experience. That she'd learned her lesson. But to me, it didn't feel like growth. It felt like damage control. And the more she reached out, the more disgusted I felt, not just with her, but with how close I came to tying my life to someone like that. Then yesterday, I found out she was still trying to run a new angle. Her new lawyer reached out to mine. They were threatening to sue me for emotional distress caused by the canceled engagement. Didn't last long, though. The moment my lawyer showed him Mark's notebook and the text messages between him and the fake lawyer, the guy dropped her case on the spot. Turns out Austin is now facing real legal trouble. Charges for corporate espionage. Apparently, he didn't just plan to hurt me, he actively tried to sell my business data to competitors. Virginia isn't speaking to him anymore. But honestly, that doesn't change what she did. Maybe Austin planted the seed, but she watered it. She nurtured it. She helped it grow right up until she got caught. I've moved on now. Changed all my business security protocols. Upgraded everything. Locked it all down. And yeah, I'm a lot more careful about who I let into my life these days. This whole thing taught me something important. People don't always change into someone else. Sometimes they're just revealing who they really were all along.